I re-watched Oppenheimer last night, but it was some of my friends' first time seeing the movie. After the movie was done, a few of them asked me why Strauss turned on Oppenheimer, and after going on Reddit, I see that this is a common question. So me, being the desperate YouTuber that I am, saw a niche, and I'm trying to fill it. The reason why Louis Strauss, yes, Strauss is how you say it, hates Oppenheimer can be noticed throughout the movie time and time again. During their first meeting, Strauss tells Oppenheimer that he used to be a shoe salesman. Oppenheimer responds with a slight dig by calling Strauss a lowly shoe salesman. Strauss clarifies, no, just shoe salesman. This starts the build-up of Strauss not liking Oppenheimer and feeling mistreated by him. Of course, the conversation with Albert Einstein and Oppenheimer further heightens his suspicions. From Strauss's perspective, he doesn't hear a word of the conversation, but right after, Einstein refuses to even acknowledge him as he walks past. This leads Strauss to believe that Oppenheimer may have said something about him that lowered his reputation in the eyes of Einstein. Immediately after passing Einstein, Strauss asks Oppenheimer what their conversation was, and Oppenheimer doesn't directly answer his question. This response, or lack thereof, makes Strauss all the more suspicious of Oppenheimer, and this moment also shows Oppenheimer subtly undermining Strauss since he deems his question not important enough to answer directly. Oppenheimer and Strauss are both shown to have massive egos in the movie, and there are plenty of moments where Oppenheimer disses Strauss. Oppenheimer humiliates Strauss at the hearing when he says that exporting radioactive isotopes is useful in creating a bomb, just like a beer or a sandwich might be useful in creating a bomb. During the dinner scene with the round table and the big vase that Strauss has to move to make himself a part of the conversation, we can again see Oppenheimer throwing jabs at Strauss since he isn't a scientist. Another great example of Oppenheimer disrespecting Strauss happens when Strauss brings over some people. If I remember correctly, it was actually his family, to meet Oppenheimer as he is now a global icon. Oppenheimer just nods his head and then turns his back to these people, again indirectly sending the message that Strauss is unimportant. In real life, there were also some other reasons behind the feud that are not explored as deeply in the movie. Both men came from staunchly different backgrounds. Oppenheimer came from a family of money located in New York, and he was highly educated. Strauss came from a much more modest family in Virginia, and while he had hopes to go to college to study physics, his family couldn't afford it, and so he was just a high school graduate. Both men were also Jewish, but they differed in their involvement with their faith. It is reported that Strauss was upset with Oppenheimer for downplaying his Jewish ancestry. We can see this in the movie, specifically in the train scene with Isidore. Oppenheimer states that he learns other languages, but he doesn't bother with Yiddish. This shows how Oppenheimer isn't extremely connected to his Jewish roots. But there you have it. Those are the reasons I caught for Strauss not liking Oppenheimer. I hope that answers the question, and if there's anything I missed, please let me know in the comments below. I also want to take a moment to analyze the feud between Strauss and Oppenheimer and how it plays into the film's ideas and themes. There is a brief scene where Oppenheimer gives a speech about the Cold War, and he mentions that Russia and the US are like two scorpions at war with each other. They can kill the other, but in turn, they will kill themselves. This line may be true for the Cold War, but I believe the underlying subtext here is really getting at Strauss and Oppenheimer. They are the two scorpions who can take each other down, but in turn, they will take down themselves. We see this with Strauss, who goes after Oppenheimer, and while his campaign works, it also backfires since it results in him not being confirmed for his nominated position as the Secretary of Commerce. This would have been the crowning achievement of Strauss's career, but he tarnished his chances by going after Oppenheimer, and not being confirmed for a cabinet position is a rare occurrence which just adds further insult to injury. On top of this, the central theme of the movie seems to be delayed consequences. You do an action in the heat of the moment, but the repercussions of that action catch up to you later. This is hinted at through the rippling on the pond that we are constantly shown in the movie, and through Neil Bohr's quote, which talks about lifting up a stone that has a snake underneath. You must be prepared to face this snake, and this is what Bohr constantly tells Oppenheimer. The same can be applied to Strauss. He lifts the stone on Oppenheimer, but he isn't prepared to face the snake that will turn back on him. Strauss also makes a grave mistake when he tells his assistant that he set up a trial to revoke Oppenheimer's security clearance. This information getting out leads to Strauss eventually getting caught, and while we are not told specifics, the information makes its way to David Hill, who exposes Strauss for the kangaroo court he has orchestrated. Strauss talks about how if you want power, you have to stay in the shadows and you can't reach for the sun. Yet he does this exact thing when he tells his assistant. It seems like he almost tells his assistant about his plans to gain some validation. After all, he does have a massive ego. Another message of the movie is that you can't let the genie get out of the bottle, and Strauss lets himself get out of the bottle when he tells his assistant that it's been him behind Oppenheimer's demise. We really get to see how devastating an ego can be in the movie, and this is true for both Oppenheimer and Strauss. Let's be blunt. While Strauss is out of pocket for vilifying a man over some petty grievances, Oppenheimer is no saint either. Oppenheimer was a straight-up dick for the bulk of the movie, and he didn't loosen up on his disrespect when it came to Strauss. Honestly, it gets me thinking, had Oppenheimer been a bit more courteous and pleasant to Strauss, then this whole kangaroo court controversy could have likely been avoided, since Strauss wouldn't have that animosity in the first place that motivated him to go after Oppenheimer. It's a trickle-down effect for Oppenheimer here, where his ego and cold interactions eventually caught up to him and led to his reputation being tarnished. The film shows us that chain reactions are just as much chemical as they are social, so be careful of the stones you turn, because the snake might just get you.